Hello and welcome to Films for the Very First Time. My name is Jordan, and with me, as always, is Casey McGeorge.
Oh, how's it going, everybody?
Going good. We're done the behemoth that is the Lord of the Rings extended editions, as today's episode is all about that Return of the King extended edition. So very excited to talk about this one. I watched it over the course of 2 days. I watched some on Friday and the rest yesterday. I know you watched it earlier than you usually do. We had to prepare. Um, but yeah, so we're talking Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, which released December 17th, 2003 in the United States. Budget of 94 million, box office 1.148 billion. Directed by Peter Jackson, screenplay by Fran Walsh, Philippa Boyens, and Peter Jackson, based, of course, on The Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien, and starring our all-star cast of Elijah Wood, Ian McKellen, Liv Tyler, Viggo Mortensen, Sean Astin, Kate Blanchett, John Rhys Davies, Bernard Hill, Billy Boyd, Dominic Monaghan, Orlando Bloom, Hugo Weaving, Miranda Otto, David Wenham, Carl Urban, John Noble, Andy Serkis, Ian Holm, and Sean Bean makes a short appearance in this one. Uh, Again, this is a third part of a trilogy, so we don't really need to go into what I liked about this movie or why I picked this film. So we can kind of just start diving into the actual movie. But I have a question for you. You
Okay, go
said you
ahead.
took note this time of
Yes.
where the first disc ended. So where did the first disc end?
The appearance of the wolf's head.
That's interesting. Was that like the most?
He said, like, bring out the wolf's head or whatever. And
Yeah, the battering
I
ram
think
thing.
they just show it real quick. And then it's like, movie continues on this too. Okay.
Yeah, so that's got to
Which
be
I
like the
guess was
so
a
far
good
like.
part.
You think so? It sounds like the most like abrupt part out of the first out of the other two movies, right?
Considering where disc two picks up, like the scenes right after that, where it picks up, that's probably the best. The only other portion would maybe be the scene I think the scene after that. I'm trying to think of what it was. Because it takes a while to go back to the wolf's head. Uh, I think there's something with Gandalf or something right after that, and then man, I know the two scenes right after that were like one was kind of inconsequential, and then right after that one there was something with Smeagol. Um, so like maybe they could have stopped it right before the scene with Smeagol, whatever he was doing. I forget what it was. I probably should have took note of that, but it seemed like a decent place. Plus, I think it was like halfway through like 4 hours or close enough halfway through 4 hours to say, okay, go take a pee break and come on back.
Yeah, that's the one thing we haven't talked about so far on this. This is the longest of the three, and actually has the shortest credits too. I double checked because I thought it says 4 hours 23 minutes. I think the other ones have been like 28-minute credits or close to 30 minutes, and this movie ends at 4:01, I believe. So only 22
Yeah,
minutes of credits
yeah. So
in this one.
I think I saw that too. It was because as it was getting close to the end, I kept looking at the timer to see how much time was left or how much credits were left. One thing talk about before the movie starts: 11 Academy Awards. Now,
Yep.
not saying they didn't deserve them. Um, I looked up the Academy Awards that year to see like what else was nominated. Um, at least to me, it wasn't like a banner year at the Academy Awards that year. It was like Mystic River. Um, there was a um, movie from which might have been Mystic River from Clint Eastwood. Like Renee Zellweger won like a Best Actress Academy Award. Um, that was the year's Charlize Theron won for Monster,
Mm.
the biopic of Eileen Wuornos. And I also thought too. I mean, they won in a lot of technical categories, which by all means, except for a couple scenes, which I could tell were very obvious green screen as they're like walking up to Mount Doom.
Yeah.
But then again, it's not like they can just walk up like an actual like volcanic mountain, right? While they're filming that. But on the technical level, like they won a lot of those. Master and Commander was also a big winner from a technical level for a couple. Um, there wasn't like so Johnny Depp was actually nominated that year for Curse of the Black Pearl, which I didn't know until I looked that up yesterday.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, I did not know that. I didn't see any like acting awards for anybody for the four
Oh.
categories, which maybe because it's an ensemble cast and the movie cuts between stories so often, and you're going from here to there, and then back over here, and then over to these people, and then Liv Tyler's only in the movie for like 30 minutes in like 18 hours, which was kind of weird, but okay, whatever. Like maybe she had some other commitments and they filmed all her scenes at once, and she shuttled off from New Zealand. But yeah, there was like no acting awards. Like Peter Jackson obviously got Best Director because it swept all 11 it was nominated for. It got Best
Yeah.
Picture, which I get, but then I was like, how come there was no acting awards for this movie? Especially since it seemed like, not to take anything away, it seemed more like a culmination award for Peter Jackson and the crew and everything.
I
Once
think it
again, not
was.
saying that.
I think it was seen as that, and it probably was that. Like, if we're gonna give these movies the awards, we're gonna give it on the third one, type of thing. It's kind of how it felt.
Because I didn't look to see what the other two were nominated for. But especially on like a technical level, since I think they all three were filmed at the same time,
Right.
or at least the first one, and then the back two might have been filmed like right after that, something close to that aspect. Um, I can't imagine there was a lot of technical stuff that was elevated from like Lord of the Rings. What was the first one called?
Fellowship of the Ring.
Fellowship of the Ring to Return of the King. So I can't imagine they did a ton technologically different, but
Here's the Academy Awards for Fellowship of the Ring. It won cinematography. It won Best Makeup and Best Original Score. It was nominated and Best Visual Effects. So it won 4 awards. It was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor Ian McKellen, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Art Direction, Best Costume Design, Best Film Editing, Best Original Song, and Best Sound. And it did not win those.
I didn't know Ian McKellen had a nomination for that.
For the first one, yeah.
Well, I mean that's good, but
Let me see if I can find the Two Towers, if it was nominated for. I mean, I'm sure it was nominated, but let's see what the Two Towers won. So Two Towers won Best Sound Editing, Best Visual Effects. It was only nominated for 6: Best Picture, Best Art Direction, Best Film Editing, Best Sound, and it did not win those 4.
and then I think I remembered what another scene they might have been able to cut at was, remember in Fellowship of the Ring we talked about who's the other wizard there?
Saruman?
Can't remember. Yeah, who played Saruman?
Christopher Lee.
Yeah, Christopher Lee. Well, we talked about the story about when he said when he got stabbed in the back, and Peter Jackson wanted like all this flailing, and then, the whole story of, do you know what it sounds like? Because I do. I think that was one of the first scenes where this 2 picked up. Because like it wasn't too long after I started this 2, I was like, oh, okay. What was that disc 1?
That's disc 1. It's very early in the movie. Yeah. Very
okay.
early.
You know what? Yeah. That was very early, because I was like, I remember starting and I was like, okay, we haven't answered what sound they actually went with, and it was the It was
Gas.
just he gets stabbed in the back and gasping for air, and he got a pretty violent death. Like he just got
Oh,
shoved off
yep.
the tower and just that was it. It was like, whoa, dude.
That, by the way, is only in the extended edition.
Which the whole scene or
Yeah,
the
Saruman's death.
violent death or the whole death or
From
just him getting like crushed on the wheel or whatever.
no, from what I remember, it's the whole scene.
Wow. I know so one thing I could have done, I just realized after I put in disc one yesterday and I was looking through the little insert that comes with it with each
Mm-hmm.
box for each disc. It actually, because it shows like disc one, disc two, disc three, four, five, and then it shows like what's on each one. And then for like disc one and two are the movies.
Yep.
And it gives you like the name of the scene. And, so there was actually a notation in there that actually had like a star for like this is an extended scene.
Oh, okay.
And
I have it on.
another
I
one
have
for
the
like this
site
is a
too.
completely new scene that said like, oh, this is a completely new scene, for the extended editions. I could have done all that, but I didn't realize until I looked yesterday, and I was like, I didn't do it for the other two, so we're just gonna skip over.
I have a website that tells me. So that says new scenes, the voice of Saruman, scene number 4 of the movie. I think that's the one where he dies.
Yeah, that was pretty early, so I was like,
Yeah.
wow, that okay. I have my answer to what scene they were with. Okay,
There's only 4 new scenes in disc 1, and then the rest are all extended scenes. And then new scenes in disc 2, we actually have 10. 10 new scenes in disc 2.
what's the
Wow.
what's the first scene on disc two?
It says it's called The Corsairs of Umbar.
I have no clue what any of that means.
Let me see. Let's see. Oh, okay. So this is the scene where okay, so the first scene is those boats with Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas on the shore.
Oh yeah,
And
where
yeah,
he
yeah.
gets the ghost or whatever, the ghost people or whatever
And
to
that's a new
attack.
scene. That is a new scene.
Okay. Yeah, so what's the scene after that? Because I was thinking they could have stopped after that scene because that would have been a good kind of like a good actiony way to end on, and then the next one I think was starting up with something with Schmiegel. Oh, you're muted. Hey, you're muted. I can't hear you.
All right, there we go. Sorry, my mouse was taking a while to drag over there too. Um, Scene 38 is the next scene after the boat scene, but it doesn't tell me what scene 38 is called because it's not new or extended. So
Ah,
probably
okay.
something with Smeagol, like you said.
Yeah, but like I said, that could have been a good way after like the ghosts come out and attack all the people on the boats. Like that could have been another good ending scene
Mm-hmm.
to like, okay, let's go on to this too, because it gives a little more suspense. But I kind of get why they went with the first one, at least seeing this big wolf, fire breathing wolf door banger thing, and you're like, okay, that's kind of intimidating. And
Yeah,
then
yeah. All right, so that was won lots of awards. This was I think tied now for like the most awards with Titanic or something.
yeah, Titanic, and there was like one other movie from like back in the day, um, that like had 11 awards or something. Which, like I said, I get maybe it probably was it can be they looked at maybe like a culmination of doing all of that. I also get like their makeup and stuff was great, but when I looked at like the nominations, because especially back then they were only doing like 3 or 4, maybe 5 nominations per category. They weren't doing a ton. Now I think they're up to like 8 or 9 or 10 or something. But
I
back
think
then they
it's
do like
10 now. Yeah, and it used to
they
be
were doing
5
like
or something.
4 or 5 or 6, somewhere in that range, where it was pretty short. Um, so I just looked and there wasn't much during that whole thing that kind of was like I looked at least for me where I was like, oh, like that could have won Best Picture, and I was just like, yeah, no, that like yeah, I can see why this won a lot. Maybe I guess some years there's just not a like heavy hitters at those things. Some years you can just like obviously the year Titanic came out, you like you can just cancel Christmas, like you know.
All right. So also, just want to share this too. This is my ticket from when I went to see it. I didn't realize I saw it so much later than opening. I saw it like about 10 days later on the Christmas holiday break, the 27th of '03 at
Eight,
7 o'clock. We bought the ticket at 6:37, I guess, but this was at a AMC in Towson, which I don't even think
eight
exists
dollars,
anymore. Eight
$8
dollars,
for a
yeah.
movie ticket.
Yep, for an 8 o'clock Saturday showing, that's pretty good.
And I don't think they had like what is AMC's like premium theater thing called now?
Uh, X. No, what is it? I think they have
No,
IMAX.
I think it might be the X
That's Cinemark
whatever
has
it is.
XD or something,
Yeah.
but AMC is, I think, just IMAX.
But yeah, I don't think back then they had. Well, don't they have their own? Because IMAX is very picky about. You need like certain like
Mm-hmm.
one. I think it even has to be filmed with like IMAX cameras. Because I think I remember somebody. Maybe it was something they filmed for The Dark Knight. Somebody said when Nolan brought out the IMAX cameras for that, like they were so loud when they were filming stuff because the cameras are so big, you need so much things for them or whatever. But I mean, maybe it's different now, but especially back then, it was like you have to use like certain cameras in order to be able to get IMAX stuff. So I don't know.
I'm trying to find if I can. I'm just clicking a movie and trying to find if there's a premium format for any of these um movies. Let's see which one's the like a new movie that would have good screens right now. Yeah, I don't know. Mine just says digital.
Exorcist.
That's what I
Uh,
clicked. Uh, but some of these, there's not a lot of good movies out right now, I guess. So all I keep seeing is like digital. I don't see any like premium for it. Let's click the Taylor Swift movie.
that might
Dolby
be one.
Cinema. They have Dolby Cinema there, and they have IMAX at one of my local ones. But all I see is digital, Dolby, and IMAX. So I guess they don't have like their own brand unless if it's one of these digital ones. Anyway, yeah, $8, good ticket. That's what I pretty much pay now when I get matinees. I'll go like
Yeah.
I'll go to like 8 a.m. Not 8 a.m. showings. I'll go to like before noon showings, and I'll usually be paying like $8 for stuff. So okay, so this movie starts off a little interesting way here, right? We have the Andy Serkis not on motion cap here as he is a hobbit and fishing with his cousin Deagle.
Is that
And
what he was? I didn't know he was a hobbit. I couldn't figure out just because he looked like a strung out heroin addict. Like
you think so? Even before the ring, you think he looked like a heroin addict?
he, I mean, like I said, the makeup was great, but it looked like maybe, yeah, maybe on his way to being strung out. But I wasn't totally sure, and I'll admit I hadn't thought of up until that point of, hey, how did Smeagol get the ring in the first place
Yeah, that he started out as a hobbit, and then becomes when he gets corrupted by the ring here as he kills his cousin for it.
with his bare hands too? Like chokes him out. Jeez.
Good setup too for the rest of the movie because we kind of see this scene replayed from different, like another perspective again when it's like Frodo and Smeagol fighting off, and then they're both trying to choke each other. Like it's kind of like a little bit of a mirror. Um, did this did this shock you at all? Where you're like, oh my god, we're getting like the backstory of Smeagol here to start off? Because I remember being a kid watching this, and I was like, wow, okay, we're seeing like. At first, you're like, "What are we seeing?" Because we didn't know who Andy Serkis looked like really back then, you know.
Yeah,
And then
we
he
had no.
talks, and you're like, "Oh, okay, it's Smeagol."
I it was shocking, but it was in a good way. Like I said, up until that point, it never occurred to me to think of, hey, how did Smeagol come in contact with the ring in the first place? Like, what is the story of that? Like, where did he get it? How did he come in contact with it? What happened? You know, um, I think did they show the ring in the first movie getting in that river or pond or whatever?
Yep, yep. It's in the prologue, and it's also that same scene of Deagle grabbing the ring out of the ground is
Mm-hmm.
reused from the prologue as well.
Okay. I was gonna say I remember something looking a little familiar, but uh I couldn't place anything where. Um but yeah, I was like, okay, like this makes sense because we know what he's like now. We know the dude is crazy over the ring. But how? Like obviously we know the ring corrupts everybody, but it never occurred to me, like I said, until that scene to be like, oh, this is how we came in contact with it. This is how quickly he got corrupted by it. Because it was quick. He got corrupted by it. He hadn't even touched it yet.
Yeah,
Like
he
just the
just
fact
wanted
that
to see it.
just the fact that his friend had it that made him decide, you know what, I'm gonna choke you with my bare hands. Like if I was listening to one of my true crime podcasts, they'd go off on a tangent about how like that's a very personal and intimate killing and like how it actually takes a lot longer to strangle somebody with your bare hands than it does in movies. Like it takes like minutes and you actually have to put an effort into it and want to do it instead of just you can't really say it was an accident. Yeah, so I was like, wow, okay, like I'll buy that scene. Like this is a good way to start.
Yeah, and then we actually get to see like a physical golem before he transforms into the CGI golem, where he's like climbing up the mountain. Um, Apparently they have a sculpture, or they did in 2013, of Gollum catching a fish at the Wellington Airport in New Zealand. I see a picture of it here, but it was to release. It was for the Hobbit films being released. So I wonder if they still have it there or not. But it looks pretty cool. I just imagine like going to the airport and seeing a large Smeagol hanging from the ceiling, grabbing a large fish.
I would say they probably do because there's I mean we know this series and the books and now the movies have a huge fandom and that does bring some tourists and tourist dollars into New Zealand for that, which hey I'm all for. That's great. Um, go for it. I would say as well, it's not worse than the evil horse outside of the Denver airport. Have you seen
I
that
don't know if
one?
I've seen that. No. I mean, do I just search evil horse outside Denver airport?
Let me see here. How do I? I have it up. How do I?
Put it in the chat. Like, send me the link from the thing in the chat, and then I'll click it. Oh my god! I'll share my screen. I guess. Hold on. This is
it's
great for
called the
the
Blue Must. It's
YouTube
called the.
watchers, but
It's called the Blue Mustang or Blucifer. Um, the Denver airport also has some really weird paintings and stuff inside it, and there's a ton of conspiracy theories about like because they have a subway that goes from like terminal to terminal and everything else. But there's this whole thing about like how like the New World Order was involved in the building of uh, the the Denver airport because it also went like years and millions of dollars like over budget, and there's
oh wow.
supposedly underground like things there for like all these the rich and powerful people to go when the world ends, and then you look at some of the paintings inside and the artwork that they have put up inside the Denver airport, and you're like, who the hell decided like this was a good thing to put up? And there's just some, like, if you look, like, you can go down a rabbit hole. It's weird, but so I mean, I can see a Schmiegel at a is that at the Auckland International Airport, or is that at like a
Wellington.
smaller airport? I, okay, like I think Auckland's the capital of New Zealand. I imagine Wellington's probably a town that's a little bit smaller, but still a major town. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's we start off with Smeagol. We get some big Schmiegel storylines there, and then we kind of cut back to uh, our characters that we know: Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Gandalf are going to Isengard. This is where they run into Merry and Pippin, who are smoking some tobacco as they are celebrating the victory over Isengard. We see a little bit of Treebeard, and then we get that scene that you were talking about with Saruman and King Theoden talking Wormtongue into kind of betraying Saruman again, and then Legolas kind of just kills Wormtongue anyway. Feel sorry for him. Not really, but
I was gonna say,
just
yeah, I don't really feel
interesting.
bad for him. I mean,
No, but it's like, all right, he's the one that just helped you. Well, obviously they didn't want Saruman dead because Saruman was about to actually talk about what Sauron is actually trying to do here, and so it kind of screwed up their whole plans. But yeah, and then like you said, he falls off the, the tower and lands onto the spiky wheel, the water mill,
that I mean, with a
and he's
thud,
done.
like that was one. That was one of those. Like I said, it was like I figured they just show it from above, and maybe you would just see like, oh, he falls, and maybe like like a little small thing of like his body hitting the ground from above. But no, like they were just like, nah, we're gonna show this whole thing, and I was just like, whoa, that was like I'm not the death doesn't bother me, and but I was
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like I was not expecting that.
I guess that's why it's in the extended, right? I guess these are not technically rated. There's a few things that like my wife was like, "Are you gonna finish watching it down here?" And I was like, and she would have stayed downstairs with me. She's never really seen these. She doesn't like gore or anything. She's like, "It's not like they're gory, right?" And I said, "Well, where I had left off, well, they just, used a trebuchet, a bunch of severed heads, and there's a big spider coming up, which she doesn't like spiders. So I was like, I think I'll watch it upstairs."
Okay, so I got to say this. I imagine they might have got that from a historical thing. I don't know. Because I would say if anybody who decided, even if it was Tolkien and that was written in the books, which I imagine probably was, because you said these are fairly faithful to the books. Um, Anybody who's writing that or coming up with that nowadays, I think we need to go send them for some mental health help. But dot dot dot. Uh, Dude, you like as I was thinking about this, and back in the day, many moons ago, when people used to line up for battles like that, and everybody would line up, and you would have these lines, and everybody's in the castle over here, and these people are over here, and they're getting ready to go face to face and start firing at each other, and you've already killed a bunch of their people, like. Yeah, that's probably one of the most evil things to do, and one of the probably most intimidating things to do is like, you know what? We're not going to send any rocks at you at first. I'm going to send you back the severed heads of your buddies, and that's gonna eliminate some of you right there because a bunch of you are going to be like, you know what? I'm not really up for this anymore. So I was like, that probably happened historically somewhere. I can imagine. If it didn't, I think we need to get whoever wrote it some help. But I was like, yeah, I'm behind that. That's definitely an intimidating feature.
Yeah, there are some things that are not as faithful in this. I would assume the heads are just made up for the film. Honestly, uh, I can't recall Obviously, I read these in like eighth or ninth grade. I can't recall 100%, but it does seem just a little darker than what would have been in the books. There are some things that are changed around, so I think people would probably kick me if I didn't mention this type of stuff. Sheolob's lair, the big spider, that's actually in the Two Towers. When we
Okay,
talk about
the
books,
spider has a name.
yeah, Shelob. Yep.
Why does the spider? Who names a spider?
Oh no, they
Why
do
does the
mention in the
spider?
movie. They do mention in the movie the orcs are like, "Oh, Shelob's been hungry," and when they find Frodo, that's who they're referring to, the big spider. Um,
So with that scene, I'll say I might have seen like a glimpse of it online or something here or there. But also, as soon as they went into that cave or whatever, and I saw the spider webs, like I don't know how other people felt, but I was like, oh, there's a spider coming up in this one. Like there's got to be a big spider. There was way too many spider webs, just visibly, and I was like, part of me was like, okay, maybe just because it's in a cave and maybe there's a lot of little spiders, but I was like, I can't remember if I've seen it before, like maybe in passing or just online or
right.
something. I could have, so I might have had some sort of knowledge that I couldn't remember. Not gonna say I wasn't, but I was like, oh yeah, there's a big ass spider coming somewhere in this one.
Yeah, there was. That is from the Two Towers. So is the Palantir subplot. So that's like the ball, the glowing orb, bowling ball type thing that Mary looks into. That Pippin looks into, and that also Aragorn is
Oh,
going to speak into.
the one that Saruman dropped and they had in the
Yep.
water and they had to go down to get.
Yeah, that's usually a plot in the Two Towers. What Jackson did is he realigned the events of the film to fit the timeline from the book's appendices. So in the back of Return of the King, there are appendices that have timeline, order of events, and all that kind of stuff. And instead of showing stuff in the order of the narrative from the books, which were weaved in certain ways for however J.R.R. Tolkien was setting stuff up, he went by timeline order instead. So the Shelob events actually match up more with the stuff from Return of the King in that regard. Um,
Also, I would say, something I thought of when in the very beginning when Smeagol and his buddy were fishing there, like obviously they needed it to move the plot along to get to the ring, but like why did his friend hold on to that fishing pole for so long under the
yeah,
water? Like why didn't he let go of that thing? Like so if there's a fish big enough to drag me underwater,
yeah, no thanks.
um, one one I can't swim, so like I'm pretty much done. Or I can't swim very well, so that's not a good thing for me. Two, like yo, if it's strong enough to take me down with it, like I don't want to know what else is down there. Like I'm gonna like it's not gonna end well for me one way or the other.
Yeah, like Qui-Gon says in Phantom Menace, there's always a bigger fish. So if there's a fish big enough to pull you, then there's a bigger one to eat that one. So you gotta be careful. And also they kind of move around where Saruman's murder is because they moved it into Isengard because originally there is an event called the scoring of the Shire, which is actually the penultimate chapter of Lord of the Rings. But this is where the hobbits return home and find that the Shire is like under a brutal control from their leader of Sharky, and Sharky is revealed to be Saruman actually at that point. But uh they so here's the thing. Some people were very upset that this is taken out of the movie because critics have considered this chapter to be the most important chapter of the Lord of the Rings. Um Tolkien denies, though, that the chapter was an allegory for Britain in the aftermath of World War II. But that's why people say it is important, I guess, as they see it as like an allegory for Britain coming home from World War II and seeing some of the damage and stuff taking place there. Instead, in this movie, the Shire is relatively untouched. They get back there and start to live their lives pretty
And then
normally quickly.
well, Didn't they say it was like a year or so later they got back to the Shire?
From when they set
Uh,
out. Yeah. It was
yeah,
13. He said 13 months
13
since they
months.
left. Yeah.
So I also hadn't thought of the timeline either of how long these events take. Obviously, with movies, you can, when you're doing a movie, you know, you don't unless you need to know the timeline. Like it's not really, it doesn't really matter, right? Like time just moves and you get from point A to point B and so on and so forth. Um, so like there's a John Mulaney comedy, one of his things for stand up. He talks about how a lot of times they'll show time move because like somebody will get older and they'll need glasses now, or like somebody has gray hair all of a sudden, so it shows you like time before. But I hadn't thought of how long this whole adventure had taken, right? And then when they in the end when they talk about it was 13 months later, I was like, this whole thing took over the course of a year, like Jesus.
Yeah. Over a year. Um, let's see. I have the map. Let me bring up this nice fancy map compared to my crude map here. All right. So I clicked Frodo and Sam's. So uh over here on the left is where they start in the Shire in book 1 and movie 1, going all the way. This is Weathertop here in the Weather Hills, and that's where Frodo gets stabbed. Then they go to Rivendell, where they have the journey, like the council. They go through Moria down to Lorien, and you know, movie 1 ended here. We go into number 2, Dead Marshes, down to Osgiliath, which is where their journey ended in the second film. And then in this one, they go through Minas Morgul, up these mountains, which is where like Shelob is, back down over to Mount Doom. And that's where Frodo and Sam journey to. And they get to the end of this journey. Let's start with Frodo and Sam in this journey that we're talking about here. And we get to the end, and they're relatively separated from everybody until the very end of the film. But were you shocked at all? Have you been spoiled at all on the fact that Frodo almost didn't actually throw the ring in?
No, because I think maybe in one of those like Watch Mojo listicles or something, it might have been up there, or I have caught a glimpse of that at some point before. Um, so I had known that he changed his mind kind of at the last second and didn't want to throw the ring in. But I didn't know he put the ring on and then kind of went invisible. Um, I did know there was a fight between him and Schmeagol where he bit off his finger, and then Schmeagol's death, where he technically had the ring, and then fell into the lava, and then died there, and then the ring got melted there. So I've seen that in some way, shape, or form. It wasn't something I ever searched out. Like it wasn't me like, oh, let me see what happens. It was just one of those. It probably, like I said, popped up on one of those like Watch Mojo lists or top 10 lists or something online where something, and it like it's going from like 10 to 9 8, and it popped up on one of those, and I was just like, okay, sure. uh, so like I'm not gonna skip it just because it's Lord of the Rings and I didn't know what it was, but I was just like, yeah, okay, well, number 6 next. Okay, what's that? um so part of me wasn't surprised because I'd already seen it, but not knowing, part of me was kind of surprised because I'm like, dude, you made a whole big deal about this is your legacy, this is what you're supposed to do, because Sam had taken the ring, before, and then Sam kind of didn't want to give the ring back to him for a second. And Frodo talked about how this is his burden to carry and so on and so forth. So
Yeah, that's a you know, it's like at that last moment, as I think what it's supposed to be is, as of course you get closer and closer to destroying the ring, or at least getting it close to Sauron, that it's gonna corrupt you even more, and at that point we kind of saw that with Isildur, Aragorn's great 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 whatever he is, and
Yeah, because he was right
how
there
they
at the
same
same
spot.
spot or
Yep.
close. Yeah, where he decided he
Same
didn't want to
devilish
do it either.
smile crossing his face like Frodo has when he's like, "No, it's mine." Um,
Was that? Is that in the books as well, or
yeah, yeah. Well, you mean like
so
Isildur or the
the
like?
fact that Frodo decided at the last minute he didn't want to throw it in, and then there was a fight between him and Smeagol,
Yeah, I
or
believe
was that
so. I don't
something?
think that is. I don't think it's any different. Let's see. I'm trying to see if I can find anything about that. Okay, so Gollum's fall into the lava was rewritten for the film as the writers felt. So apparently he just slipped and fell. Originally, originally they were going to write that Frodo would push Gollum over the edge to destroy him and the ring, but it looked like they said it would look like it's that Frodo's murdering Gollum. So instead, they have them struggle for possession of the ring and do it. So originally, I guess yes, he does say like it's mine, and then Gollum comes out, and then Gollum gets it, and then just slips and falls in. But and they thought that was a little anticlimactic, so they spruced it up a bit with them struggling for it to go and then going over the edge.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. I wouldn't. I can understand like him just slipping and falling in is anticlimactic, and people would have been people who hadn't read the books who would know that follows the books would be like, really, like that's how he gets his comeuppance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the whole aspect of him murdering him, maybe that's it's a little too far. I don't know. I'm not gonna say it's not, but uh, that probably went with the best idea visually for a movie version of the storytelling. Um, except if this were not something that was already a book, right? We talked about on our other podcast. You're talking about like for Star Wars, like what kind of post credit scene would they have? Like there would have been a post credit scene of like either that ring popping up and not melting in the lava or something, or like or like Schmiegel's hand popping up or something like that. There would have been
Right,
some
right.
weird post credit scene, but probably because the stories are already written, they really can't do that one. So
Yeah, and one of my favorite bits I think of this whole storyline is really how Sam, if Sam hadn't ever followed Frodo originally, he's kind of like the unsung hero a bit here. Everybody kind of gives Frodo his due, but I'm going to give Samwise his due here because Frodo does not destroy the ring without Sam.
he
He
would have
saves.
died somewhere in the middle of like the first movie without Sam.
Yep, yep. I mean, especially like even in this movie, you get Frodo is really buying into what Smeagol was saying. Sam definitely knew something was up. Smeagol tries to make it look like Sam ate the rest of the bread, and then, Sam gets told to go home. But he decides to go back, and he saves Frodo from the spider. He's also going to say to him, I can't carry the ring, but I can carry you. And he takes him all the way up there pretty much. And he lays it on the line for Frodo constantly. So I really Sam's one of my favorite characters, and I'm very sad he usually doesn't get much of his due.
I would definitely say Sam is probably the MVP. No issue there. My only issue that I had is at the end when they're going back to the Shire, right? They get back there. Now obviously I think at least three, if not at least not Sam and Frodo, but at least Merry and Pippin have been known to be like troublemakers back in the Shire or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So people didn't really like them. So the grumpy old man there was like sweeping his sports, gives them like the mean mugs them as they're walking in.
Yeah, while they're all
Um,
decked out in all these nice clothes now from celebrating.
have the stories and have these things not made it back to the Shire of the things that they went through and what's happened? So like really these like has this that
Yeah,
information I got back like
I think the Shire is pretty isolated. It is the thought here. So they until these people are going to tell it, or until I guess Frodo's book gets published, right? I think, yeah, I think most people there don't really understand what they've done, or what they've sacrificed. Yeah, I think the way I kind of look at it is almost like if you're a hot shot on your college campus type thing, and then you go back to your hometown and you weren't popular there or something, and everybody's going to treat you the same way they treat you because they have no clue what growth or stuff you've done elsewhere. And I feel like that's, these people just saved the whole world, and this grumpy guy sweeping is like, get off my lawn type of guy.
These kids are back. Damn it! Like,
Yeah, I thought we were rid of them.
yeah, the town's been so peaceful for the last year without these guys here.
Yeah, Sam becomes mayor though. I mean, that's in Frodo's book there, and it is one of the actual storylines in the book. But yeah, Sam becomes mayor, so I'm
Well,
sure everyone will know.
I don't think Sam was like, he wasn't known as like a troublemaker though. It was mainly just marrying Pippin.
Yeah. But I guess they associate with them, right? So that guy's probably like, all four of them.
Okay, I'll buy that. Guilty by association.
Yeah.
I'll accept that.
Yeah, so we had this was like close to 4 hours this time. Like I said, 4:01 or something. This is the longest of the three. So I kind of hinted at this over time, where I've said it before, how my theater was always like almost groaning each time it kept going. It wasn't obviously this long in theaters, but I think the part now that really showed me like, okay, this is where they started getting a little restless, is there's like about 3 fade to black and a fade to white. So all 4 of those times, people thought this, okay, movie's over, and then it came right back from the fade, and they're like, oh, okay, movie is not over. So yeah, that's the part I was referring to. It's like fades to white, I think, when they get picked up by the Eagles, and you have a fade to black when they're resting again, like Frodo wakes up and everyone sees them. You have another fade to black, I think, sometime when they're in the Shire, and then you have like the final fade when Sam goes home finally. So yeah. People that were holding their bladders were like, oh my god. The scene that really gets me too, kind of an Aragorn scene, but sticking with Frodo and Sam and these characters, is this scene actually made me tear up this time, and I knew it was coming, but I don't know why it got me so much this time. But when they're crowning Aragorn and all that, and then he comes to the 4 hobbits, and then they're about to bow,
Yeah.
and he's like, "No, you guys bow to no one." Just really got me choked up this time. I don't know what about it, but
you know what? It did for me as well. So obviously I don't know much about the history. I'm guessing hobbits were not known as fighters, right?
no,
Like they,
no.
they weren't involved in many wars. I mean, in all fairness, when you're only half the size of a normal dude, like unless you're with the exception of the dwarves, which are known as like fighting peoples, right? They're built a little stockier, and they'll tear you up. But I'm guessing the hobbits are pretty peaceful people. So I don't know. That got me too for a second, just because like I get it. He was crown king, so they're showing the proper respects to him. But because of, I mean, for all we know, these might be the only 4 hobbits that have ever done anything like that. Like especially as far as like fighting and putting their lives on the line for other races or creatures and things.
At these
Especially.
stakes, yes. I mean, Bilbo was pretty famous for doing stuff in The Hobbit, but like with the stakes of the world, yeah, these are the only 4.
But especially like Merry and Pippin were trying to actually fight throughout their adventures, and people would kept pushing them away and telling them no, didn't want them to fight. And then eventually, like, it just came down to it where they were just like, well, like, they had to like hide and find their ways, and like at one point, even one of the guys tells them like, no, you're staying here, like you're gonna be a burden, and I don't have the people to look after you, like, so I mean they're overlooked at all, but and they fought, shoulder to shoulder with these guys. Like they were willing to die just as everyone else was, right? Like especially Merry and Pippin, like they, you know, Aragon was the first one to go towards. He went running towards whatchamacallit, where Sauron was, and
Yeah.
then I think Merry or Pippin were like right behind him.
Yeah, I love that scene too because then they're just slower because they have smaller feet, like smaller legs, and they
Yeah,
get
and they
bypassed
get
by
overrun
everyone.
by everybody else. Yeah, but like, yeah, Aragon's like, all right, I guess we're doing this, and let's go, and he charges off, and you get like the two hobbits who are like, all right, well, no turning back now, let's do this, and then so part of it's got to be like motivating everybody else, part of it's got to be deflating, like, oh, so these hobbits are willing to like go do this, like, damn it, like, there's no way I can turn back now. Like I
Right,
got to
right,
go
yeah. I
do
can't
this,
get,
right?
I can't let them
I
go and me
can't turn
stay
around and
here.
let
Yeah,
two hobbits run up to go fight. So like you have absolutely no choice now. It's just like, all right, well, now I gotta go. The damn two hobbits ran in front of me, so well, I guess this is where I die. And
that's
like
why
you said,
everybody
they just,
bypasses them. They're like, "Oh crap! Like we got to catch up now."
well, that in effect, like you said, it's kind of like Michelle from Full House, where it's like I'm surprised that hasn't been turned into a meme of like, wait for me, I have little legs, because
Yeah,
that's a perfect one.
yeah,
But yeah, that scene got me. I got a little choked up. And the scene right before the end where Frodo gets on the boat, because I didn't understand what was going on, so I had to pause it and I had to like Google it, and then I found on there was I think it's the, I don't know, one of the Lord of the Rings or like Return of the King subreddits or something, I don't know. I'm sure there's a bunch of them, but
there are.
somebody like asked the question and was like, "Hey, I'm new to the fandom. Like, can somebody please explain this to me? Like, why is Frodo leaving? Like, why does he have to leave?" And somebody like the one of the first answers, I guess the now the top answer, broke it down in the best way possible. Like, basically, from all the trauma he suffered, like it's the only way he needs to get his mind and his body, his mental health right, and get right emotionally. And then where the elves are going is kind of like heaven. And I was like, okay, I kind of get that. Like, especially like I get Bilbo has to go. He's like 600 years old at this point. Um, Especially since he gave the ring up. He aged horribly after
Yeah,
giving that ring
yeah,
up. Oof. But he should have been dead a while ago, but the ring kept him going. But then I was kind of like Bilbo, and then I felt bad for Sam. Like, whoa, dude, like, no, you don't get to go after everything I did to get you up that damn mountain. Like, no, you got to stay here, man. But
yeah. Because so the place they're going to is Valinor, also known as the Undying Lands, and for elves, it's mostly like, yeah, it's kind of like a step to heaven. They will live there for a long time, and then they can pass on to like the next journey of life. Men and hobbits will still die there, but they will live longer. And actually, it'll take a lot of Frodo's pain away. And like he mentioned to Sam, it's been 4 years since Weathertop at the end of the epilogue type thing, where he got
Weathertop,
stabbed,
what was
and
that? Okay,
that's where he got stabbed. Yeah, and he says it hasn't really healed correctly. So he's probably gonna have a much nicer. Plus, he did everything. He's at the Shire. He's probably having trouble adjusting after all the stuff he saw.
he
He doesn't
lost a
have
finger. At
anyone the
least,
way Sam does. Sam's getting
yeah, he
married. He
lost
has
a finger.
kids.
He lost a finger from Smeagol. How could he not? I mean, okay, obviously now you look at it where it's like, especially after the tails go back, like, yeah, there might be a bunch of women around. Like, you might be able to coast off that for a little while, but like, you hasn't found anybody over there. Like, what's going on? What happened, man? But I kind of get that. Plus, like, anytime he sees a spider, like, he'd probably freak out. So
Yeah,
just mentally,
flashbacks.
emotionally, yeah. Like, like after they explained all that, kind of, I was like, okay, I kind of get that. Like, yeah, he needs to move away and just kind of like figure something else out. But
Yeah.
and
So
so
go ahead.
uh the books, were those the actual titles of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings when Tolkien actually wrote them?
Uh, Hobbit is also called There and Back Again, and Lord of the Rings is just called Lord of the Rings. Yeah,
Oh, so it
when he
wasn't
published
because
them.
didn't he? Wasn't it like the Fellowship of the Ring was what Frodo wrote for his portion when he wrote Lord of the Rings?
No, he just wrote Lord of the Rings in the book that he had there.
I could have swore there was something else with it. I mean, I'm sure you're probably right. I might be messing that all up completely.
Yeah, I think they're a little like I'm trying to remember, and I'm trying to find it here on the thing on the
No, you're right.
website.
It's just Lord of the Rings. You're right. It is
But
just Lord of the Rings. I don't know why I got
yeah,
that
I'm trying to think if like in the book in the books themselves, I don't know if they actually gave them those names. I think that might be just a nod to it, because in the books it's called the Red Book of Westmarch, which is the manuscripts written by the hobbits, which collect the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings events. Um, but okay, here's what the books are called in the books. It sounds like There and Back Again and The Downfall of the Lord of the Rings is what it's called. Yeah. The Downfall of the Lord of the Rings and The Return of the King is the title that Frodo writes in the book. In the books, not in the movie.
Yeah.
The movie made the nice little nod of just being like, all right, we're just going to call it what the movie's called. And
Okay, that
there you
makes
go.
sense.
Yeah, so then that's kind of like Frodo and Sam's journey at this point. I want to share, let me represent here. This is Aragorn's
Real
trip.
quick before, well, while that's coming up, so Pippin and Merry, are they still troublemakers for the rest of their life? Do they get their lives back together? Do they become adults, or does it not say like what their journey after all of this is?
So Pippin inherited his father's title of Master of Buckland. He still has his adventurous spirit, and
So
he
he's still a little shit, basically.
if you want to read it that way, yes, he even goes to Rivendell a couple times. When he and Merry die, they are buried beside their friends Aragorn and Arwen in Minas Tirith.
Okay, that
Yeah.
yeah, they deserve that.
While Legolas and Gimli make promises in the books to show the other important places to them, Gimli shows Legolas the caverns of Aglarond, which Legolas is stunned by, according to Wikipedia. And then they walk in the Fangorn forest, and they make their way to Isengard, where they bid farewell to the Fellowship, and then they each go back to their own land. So Gimli even finds his own dwarven colony in the Glittering Caves, and they reunite with help to help rebuild and improve Minas Tirith. And they are the last of the Fellowship to sail for Valinor, departing after the death of their friend Aragorn. And Legolas builds a ship for he and Gimli to sail there.
So they
And
still
Frodo
remain
actually
friends
is
after this.
deputy
Okay,
mayor until he goes back and goes to Valinor.
so those two at least still stayed friends.
Yes, yep, they stay friends. Uh, they continue their
Body count.
battle for body count. Yeah, I love that scene when he takes down the elephant, and then he's like, "That still only counts as one."
Yeah. And Legolas is up there and he's counting like one by one after
Yeah,
because I
50,
think they
60.
skipped over that. I think they skipped over that completely in like the Two Towers. Like I don't think that was mentioned at all. I think that was or what? Yeah. When did it start? Did that start in Fellowship or that
It
start in
started
Two
in Two
Towers?
Towers. It started in Two Towers.
Okay.
The you only get maybe 2 scenes of it in Two Towers in the theatrical edition. The extended edition has that final count thing that we
Yeah.
saw, where it's like 43 and 42. Um, this one has it less, I guess, as well too.
But it was a good callback. Do does word spread of hey elves aren't bad dwarves aren't bad between their species there,
Yeah, I
or
think
is that
so.
something they don't really?
I can't confirm 100%, but I believe everything gets, you know, much better. Especially most of the elves also just go back to Valinor anyway, so it's not like they'd even have to. I think this is like, they talk about the last alliance between men and elves and dwarfs, like the last time they faced Sauron. I think this is like, okay, we actually did it this time. We all played a part. We're all great with each other now, and there's relatively, few conflicts after that. So this is Aragorn's journey. So this is from uh, the end of the first one down here in the river, and then he goes left. This is when they're looking for Merry and Pippin. Then they go to Rohan, Helm's Deep, over to Isengard in the top, in the mountains there on this screen, and then they go all the way back down to Gondor and going to Minas Tirith. And then over here where his journey ends is right in front of the Dead Marshes. That's where the gate is, the Black Gate that they are going to fight um, everyone in front of. So, and I like that, thought of, okay, let's cause the diversion so that way all the orcs will come out of the Mordor, and it'll kind of leave Frodo and Sam a little bit of a journey where they don't have to have as much people going up against them.
Yeah, because where they, especially where Sam and Frodo were in the orc armor, which I'm not really sure how they weren't found out because they're only like what 3 feet tall. Like I didn't
Yeah.
know there were
Well,
orcs
orcs are
that were
pretty
that
short.
small. Orcs are smaller, but at one, just in general, they're not necessarily they're not built the same. Let's just put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they're not built the same, and they don't manage to stand out between all the other orcs was amazing coincidence. Just like wait, but I thought the plan was good too. I like that. Like, hey, at least we know they're still kicking, so let's do what we can to help them out. So
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, so we get some good stuff with that, and we get, most of their journey here is, I'd say most of their stuff is a lot of fighting, right? We get the battle on Pelennor Fields. That's right in front of Minas Tirith, where they save everyone. He brings the dead people that were supposed to have followed his ancestors and didn't, and he brings them back into the fold. He takes up his mantle of king, pretty much, rides out to the Black Gate and leads everyone there. And I love his speech. Viggo Mortensen should have been nominated, actually. I think he's one of the strongest parts of all three films because I can't imagine anybody else in this role. And he absolutely killed it. And that speech where he's like, not this day we fight, and all that stuff is just a really great. I was ready to run through a wall for Aragorn.
it was okay. I mean, there's been other speeches where I've heard movie wise where like, there's some in Gladiator that definitely had me a little more charged up. There's some other ones, but I guess for this one, it was okay. I will say he probably should have been nominated, because I think he probably was the biggest. So, like I said, I was surprised you said Ian McKellen had a nomination for Gandalf for Fellowship, but I shouldn't be because he was a big part of that, and he was
Yeah,
big part of
much
that
more of
story.
a role in that one. Yeah.
But then just in general, like as you look at the other two movies, and you think who could have been nominated for best act, like how would you separate best actor, best supporting actor, and who would have taken those roles? I'd say I definitely could have seen Viggo Mortensen as best actor. I could have seen either Sean Astin or who played Frodo. Why is my brain not
Uh,
working this morning?
Elijah
Elijah
Wood.
Wood. I could have seen one of those two for best supporting actor. Now if they would have won, I don't know, but I could have especially if they looked at this like, hey, we're giving you all these awards for achievement over the course of 3 movies. Like, I definitely think they could have had more in the best actor, best supporting actor nominations.
Yeah, Sean Astin could have been nominated, like you said, for Elijah Wood, Viggo Mortensen. Viggo Mortensen broke his darn toe to doing this role. You know, he laid it all on the line when he was kicking that helmet. So,
But no, no fault of hers, I would not give it to Liv Tyler because she was only in the movie like 30
yeah,
minutes out of a 20-hour series. Like,
one of
I was a
my
little
first
frustrated by that.
crushes as well, Liv Tyler, when I was watching this as like an 11-year-old kid.
Okay, and that's the thing. So like I think she was marketed like as being a big part of these things, and then it was just like, yeah, she's only in 30 minutes out of 20 hours or whatever it is.
And I'm
It's
pretty
like,
sure she's in it more in the extended editions than the theatrical.
Jesus, because she wasn't even in that much. Like, that's the thing.
Yeah.
I was just like, is this all we get? And then, okay, so what is? I still don't get the whole necklace thing. So is that necklace provide her with the chance to live an eternal life? And if she takes it off and gives it to someone, that means she becomes mortal and she does not have that ability anymore. What is going on with that?
Oh, I don't think it. I'm not sure if it has anything to do with the necklace. She does give up She does give up immortality to live with um
Aragon.
Aragorn. So she could have went with them to the Undying Lands. That's where they were all going in the last
Yeah.
movie, and
But
she
she stayed
decides,
on as
nope.
his queen, basically.
Yeah, but then she gets like kind of like, I don't know, infected sick because Sauron's doing something, and that's why she's like almost near death in this movie. And then
Yeah.
she comes back to life pretty much because they did stop him in time. And then she decides, you know, she sees the future, sees that she does have a son with him, and realizes that's what she wants over, you know, just living forever. And she does give up her immortality to have a family with Aragorn, and she dies shortly after Aragorn dies. Um, but they die
I
together,
I
you know,
I
live
took
a
it
life.
as basically I took it as her that necklace is what was kept her immortality to her or something. I could be completely wrong. I'm about 100% sure I'm completely wrong on that. But that's kind of the way it appeared to me. So that's why I was like, wait a minute. And then I was like,
So
okay,
what?
if she gets the necklace back, does she keep it? Like, what's going on?
No. So what I see here is I looked up the symbolic meaning of it. Okay, so it is called the Even Star. She gives it to him at Fellowship of the Ring. Um, and Elrond doesn't approve of that, but because they were lovers, Arwen gave Aragorn her necklace because it represented her commitment and never ending love. It's also why he keeps kind of like, uh, I don't know, dispelling the advances of Eowyn, who's also trying to get with him, and
Yeah,
he
so let's talk
has to
about that.
turn her down. She
So
ends
let's
up with
talk about that.
Faramir, though.
Faramir, which one is that? Which one is that?
Boromir's brother, Sean
Well,
Bean's
you
brother.
know what? She could have ended up with Merry and Pippin, one of those two. I thought there was something going on between those two. I thought there was a connection there between those two.
Yeah, Mary and her had a good connection.
But so look, I get that Aragorn still had love for Liv Tyler. I don't know who I'd pick between the two of them. Like, not gonna lie, they're both very beautiful women.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, you know, he's got his love there. I get that. He kind of could have told her a little earlier, like, "Hey, like, I'm not really into this. I can't do
I
this."
have someone else. Yeah.
Yeah, he strung her along for like 18 hours of movies. Okay,
This, and by the way, this is
and
a movie invention. It's not really a big thing in the book. This love triangle is not really a thing.
okay, he strings her on for like 18 out of these 20 hours of movies, which, as we know, is close to a year, right? And then that's not fair of him. He's kind of a dick there. Like, look,
Yeah.
if you're not into her, like, man up and be like, hey, this is not, I can't do this. You know, don't. He could even went as far as the whole "it's not you, it's me," whatever, but like don't string her along for like a year. And then, when you decide to leave before the big battle and she doesn't know what's going on, then you decide to tell her like, yeah, I know you're in love with me, but I can't do this. Like that's not cool, man. Not cool, dude.
Yeah, yeah. A movie invention, I believe here. She had more of a Faramir thing going on in the books too, and they do all that stuff where like he is talking to her when everybody else rides out, and then seeing them at the crowning. I believe all of that is extended edition. I don't think we got any Faramir Eowyn stuff in the actual theatrical edition. So, uh, the thing is, there's so much stuff in these books. They can't fit, everything in here.
You
The
can, but
the,
it'd be
the
like 50
coronation,
hours of movies.
yeah, they'd have to do like start doing TV shows or something. The coronation for Aragorn takes place in a great ceremony. In the book, though, he's actually crowned in a tent before entering the city on Pelennor Field. So they made it a little bit bigger deal in the movie too, which I think fits when you have a title like Return of the King. You got to
Yeah.
do it up a bit.
Not only that, but I think they were kind of trying to top the Star Wars scene.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, timelines here. Let me see. I have a timeline. Um, yeah, so they returned the bag in 3021. Oh no, never mind. That's when they leave. 3021 is when they leave to go to Valinor. And let's see, what year was this? 3019 is when they. Oh no, actually, they won in 3020. Yeah, they won in 3020 or something. Yeah, okay. So in the book, he kind of leaves only after like a year of being back in Bag End. Frodo leaves. In the movie, they kind of mentioned it was 4 years, so a little different there. Okay, other characters we haven't really talked about yet, I guess, is okay. Let's talk about John Noble playing Faramir and Boromir's dad here. Grade A jerk of the movie, as he's about to burn his own son alive because he can't believe that his son is alive. And he lost Boromir. He's losing his other son, he thinks. So he's like, let's just burn ourselves to death. And then he ends up getting burned when he realizes his son is alive, and he runs off the edge of the edge of the courtyard and plummets to his death. What are your
Okay,
thoughts on this guy?
let's. He's a dick. I'll give you that. But let's play devil's advocate here. Um, the only one telling you his son is alive was Mary
Pippin.
or Pippin. Pippin's the only one saying he's still alive. Like he's the only one. It appears he's dead. Um, I'm sure the king had his advisors there to like kind of maybe take a once over and do their thing. Everything else is telling you he's dead. Like at this point, maybe I mean whatever their belief system entails, maybe he that's what he believes is how they get to their kingdom of heaven or whatever their afterlife is like. But he still believes like it, it's not unreasonable to think that he believes his son is dead. Now, why his son
Just
is
check
dead?
though.
Because
Like just check before you burn him. Make sure he's breathing or not, is what I would say.
okay, fair enough. Um,
Don't overreact.
but I would also say when you look at how his son died, because the way he kicked him out and basically told him like he wasn't worth anything, like yeah, that wasn't cool, man. That wasn't cool at all.
Yeah, this is not an extended edition scene. This is the I mean it is extended I think, but him plummeting to his death on fire is in the theatrical edition, and as a kid that scene stuck with me of like, oh my god, this guy has lost it. Faramir was also one of my favorite characters, so I was like, don't burn him alive. What are you doing? I think he's more of a jerk in the books too, Denethor. But he dies He was just the steward of Gondor. He was anti Aragorn. Because that would usurp his power. Um, he wanted the ring, and he has that whole fight with Faramir when Faramir's like, Boromir wouldn't have even given you the ring and all that. So, good villain, John Noble in this. He's also in the show Fringe, which I enjoy. He was good in that. But there's very funny. If anybody's watched any of the Arrowverse DC shows, there's a show called Legends of Tomorrow. It's very meta, lots of time travel stuff. At one point, they go back in time to the filming of Return of the King and meet John Noble, and he's dressed as Denethor, and it was just a really good scene, really funny scene. So now that's all I could think about when I was watching this movie. Okay, how about we kind of talked about Eowyn a bit, but when she's going up against the Witch King, the big bad of the Ring Wraiths, and he's like, "No man can kill me," and she takes off her mask and says, "I'm no man,"
I
and
knew that line was coming. I had not seen that scene
absolutely
before.
wrecks him.
I had not seen that scene before. I didn't know, but I was like, oh, like as soon as he said that, I'm like, I knew like the only thing that she can say is "I'm no man," because technically she's not, right? So
Yeah, it's
but
kind of like
and
Macbeth, right? Macbeth has something like that too, where you know, yeah, there's a prophecy like that, and it turns out that the person wasn't born of something and was able to kill the person, or so, was the downfall of somebody. So I like those type of things. But nowadays,
okay,
this would be considered woke, wouldn't it? Back then, nobody cared, and in Return of the King book, nobody cared. It's just funny that now this would be like people being like, "Oh, you're making the female take him down."
but here's a question for you. So her dad wanted her to stay back because she needed to be in
Her uncle.
charge and rule. Her uncle wanted her to stay back because she needed to be in charge and rule if something happened to him, right?
Yep.
She defies him. She goes out because she wants to fight. I can understand both sides, but like her uncle was kind of right on this one. Like now maybe he didn't go about it the right way. Maybe because he had just been trying to hold her back for so long. But the fact is, like, he's right. Like, we kind of like our family still needs someone back here in charge to run. Like, if you come out here with us and die, like, there's nothing, like, we have nothing, and then it becomes like a mad dash for like power, and that's how countries and various other things get corrupted. They go into turmoil. Like, maybe he could have done a better job of explaining that to her, because yeah, as we
Well,
saw, he did eventually die on the battlefield, but like yo, I hate to say it, he was kind of right in wanting her to saying, hey, you need to stay back and take charge of things and be in charge if something happens to me.
what I would have said to him if I'm her though too is like, all right, there is no after this right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is the battle for like Middle Earth. This is it. Um, so if everybody dies on this field, then there's nothing to really worry about when you're talking about the future. And also, nobody else would have been able to take out this Witch King anyway. So I think in the end, she's probably more right than wrong.
Okay, but that's after the fact that she becomes more right than wrong because we didn't know the Witch King with his dragon type thing was going to come out there and do that and then get his head chopped off. Like, but
Mm-hmm.
before that, without the knowledge of that happening, like you're right. Like this, you kind of need all hands on deck because if this fails, then there's nothing left. Like the orcs are gonna be in charge and just kind of brutalizing anyone and everything. But you also have to have a plan. Like there has to be a contingency plan. There has to be a plan of something like what happens when. Like even if you feel the chances are small, you still have to have a thought of, hey, when we do this like, or if something happens to me, this is who's in charge. And like I said, he could have went about it a better way, I guess. And like I said, this has been going on for 3 movies now, but or at least 2 of the 3 movies. But the whole aspect of like, hey man, if something happens to both of us, like There's nobody out here to like run things, and then that's how kingdoms and territories or whatever it is, and cities and countries go into turmoil and downfall because there's nobody in charge. Then everybody
Right.
wants to be in charge, and then everybody has to pick sides, and then horrible things happen.
Okay. Any characters you really want to talk about, or that we or moments in the movie we didn't talk about before we maybe move on to our ratings and all that stuff?
What ends up happening afterwards to the wizard there? Why is my brain not working today? Jesus.
Gandalf. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. Good question. So he goes with them to the.
He gets on
Uh.
the boat.
He gets on the boat as well. Um. He departs Middle Earth forever, so he goes on to the Grey Havens and to go to the Undying Lands. That's really it. That's all we know. So he goes over there. He leaves Middle Earth forever. The wizards are people called they're a race of Maya or a Maiar as well as what they're known as. But they're like beings that are sent down to help Middle Earth in times of need. So he really, now that everything's fine, his time to kind of leave is upon us, which is why he goes. Their physical body can be built, but it can be killed, but they do have an immortal spirit. So I do wonder what that means for Saruman now, because he did die. Saruman, like, going around and being reborn, or did he get punished for turning evil?
See,
That's
this
what I
is
want to
this is where like a post credit scene would have came up. Like I said, you either
know.
have the ring not necessarily being burned for whatever reason.
Hmm.
Maybe for one reason or another. I don't know. This is where Schmeagol hand pops up or something, and he's not dead. Or this is where Saruman, um, we find out he's not necessarily dead, or his spirit inhabits the body of something else or something like.
Hmm. Yeah. So Gandalf is gone. So really, it just leaves the Hobbit and the men and dwarves really are left on Middle Earth at this point, because the elves pretty much have gone back, and uh, the men have their king again, so they're thriving. Orcs are pretty much gone, right? They all got sucked under,
So
pretty
that's
much on the
all the orcs
ground.
are gone. That's it. No more orcs.
Yep, yep. Should be no more orcs,
So
no more
Middle Earth is
trolls.
full of peace now.
Yep, yep. There's no story that takes place after this, pretty much. So
That was actually going to
they're
be
all
my next
they're all
question.
good.
Was there a continuation of something afterwards that they just never
Nope.
we never found out about? Um, I think I saw something about his family. There was like he had a bunch more stuff written, but it was never published or something. I don't know.
It is
I
published.
saw
It
something
is a
recently.
yeah, yeah. I have a couple of the books here actually. He he was a notorious note taker. So
Okay,
he had all these notes. He had also had the other stories he had written that weren't published before. Once
like
his
side stories of
yeah,
other
once he
characters and
and
things.
and like origin history of Middle Earth and all that stuff. That's how we know so much about this stuff actually, is because some of it's not in the books themselves. But once he passed, his son Christopher has kind of gone through his notes and put together stuff to publish, and some of them are still being published now. He wrote that many notes and that many things that they are still able to keep publishing into our year of 2023, pretty much.
Dude, there had to be a ton of cocaine
I
involved for
have
this to
some here. Hold
happen.
on.
Jesus.
Okay, so one of them is called the Silmarillion, and this is kind of like the history um of Middle Earth, pretty much. This has I've been reading it. I've also just got the audio book of it, narrated by Andy Serkis, by the way. He has a recent audio book of each one of these um, books. But so this starts in the first age of Middle Earth. Then we have another one called The Children of Hurin, if I'm pronouncing that right. And this is just a story from his father's many drafts, Christopher Tolkien painstakingly editing and reconstructing the full narrative of this story. Um, and it is, again, set before Sauron forges the rings. And then they also have this thing called Unfinished Tales, which is stories from the three ages of Middle Earth. Um, again, they have so many of these. Like, they also have one called the Book of Lost Tales Part 1, the Book of Lost Tales Part 2. Just absolutely insane how many of they have. The Lays of Bellarand, The Shaping of Middle Earth, The Lost Road, and Other Writings. Yeah, these are all that have been published by Christopher Tolkien after his father passed, and just going off of his notes. And some of these are also have artwork by either somebody, or some of them actually have. I just saw one in the store the other day that has artwork by J.R.R. Tolkien himself, and it's like his maps he drew, stuff like that. So I recommend if people have watched the movies and they want to know more. Some of these are pretty dense though. But I found a couple of these books. Like this one's only $8.99. Unfinished Tales is $8.99 in this paperback that I have. And I bought the trilogy. I have a trilogy and a nice hardback version, but I also bought one to match like this style of the current books too. So, but yeah, he wrote a lot, but none of it takes place after. So everything is the build up to the Lord of the Rings.
Has his son ever thought about the possibility of trying to write, since he has all this information, right, and continue the story, or has anyone thought about
Mm-mm.
trying to
The
write?
Tolkien estate is very, very particular. Like I said, they weren't even a fan of these movies.
Which I get. I
Um,
can understand. Not saying I understand them not being a fan of the movies, but I get them being particular about their property and not wanting just anyone to have anything to make anything or some other stuff. So that is understandable. Like I would never besmirch them for that. But I was just wondering if anybody, like if Spielberg decided to come up and be like, "Hey, can we find a way to like continue these
they would
stories
never allow it.
afterwards?" Wow.
No, I think he's so much a fan of his dad's work. I don't think he would actually ever want to add to it. He usually is just editing stuff that's already there. I think J.R.R. Tolkien is very clear that like the fourth age is the age of peace and everything. I don't think he would ever be like, oh, what happens after this? So, um, and I say thank God for that. I don't think we need any sequels. Um, there is a new TV show made by Amazon called The Rings of Power, which is based more on the Silmarillion and events from the appendices that take place in the second age of Middle Earth, while the Lord of the Rings takes place in the third age. Some people don't like that show. I've actually enjoyed the show, so if I say watch it and make your own opinion. If anybody out there is curious about it, I know hardcore Tolkien fans that like it. I know hardcore Tolkien fans that think it's awful, but I enjoy the show, and you just have to know it's not going to be one for one. It's going to be, telling its own story, and it's actually made with the help of the Tolkien estate. So they're actually more involved with the TV show than they ever were with the movies.
Well, I mean, I've heard different things about it. I didn't watch Rings of Power. I know, like you said, I've heard some people who are big into the Tolkien verse there, who, for one reason or another, like it or don't like it. It falls in both ways. Um, I like I said, I never watched it just because it wasn't really my kind of thing, and I had no clue of. I would have no clue of who anybody or what was going on, so I just kind of skipped over that. But
Yep.
I could I imagine Amazon might have threw enough money at the family where they're like, we'd be Not saying they're strictly after for the money,
Five
but I
hundred
think
million.
I think so. You know, I'm a wrestling fan, right? And
Mm-hmm.
there's in the '80s there was a guy, Ted DiBiase. He was called the $1 Million Man. He had, I think I've told you this before. He had the best. He has a like a James Bond villain type laugh, like the best laugh I've ever heard, like evil laugh. And uh, he had the tagline that everyone has a price, and it started because Vince McMahon was on a flight back then in the '80s where you could smoke on a flight, and there was a guy behind him who was smoking. Vince McMahon, very weird dude, doesn't like smoke or whatever, and kept trying to pay the guy to not smoke. And the guy for a while was just like, no. And then Vince told him like everyone has a price. And he eventually was able to pay this guy enough money to not smoke on the flight. And that proved his point. And then he
Wow.
created the character. So they got a wrestler from another territory back in the day. And it was called Living the Gimmick. So he legitimately, they gave him like a couple $1,000 of cash, and they were like, just bring back receipts. And, like he would have them. He's like, you go to a restaurant, you go in there, you just buy drinks for everyone. You go out there, you just pay for a bunch of meals. Just be as obnoxious as humanly possible and just throw the money around. And that's how they created the $1 Million Man. And I say all that to say everybody's got a price. So
Yeah,
if
so I had to
Amazon went to the
refresh.
Tolkien family,
No, actually, Tolkien family, the estate, along with executives for Warner Brothers, were shopping the television rights to the Lord of the Rings. Netflix and HBO were interested, but Amazon won by paying $250 million just for the rights. That's not including any production, just for the rights. So a quarter bill just for the rights, and then if you include that they apparently are committing for, I think, 5 seasons, supposedly paying about $750 million for the 5 seasons to be able to, for how much that's going to cost to produce. It's about $1 billion that Amazon's spending on Lord of the Rings. It's crazy, but I'm excited. I enjoy the show. I'm ready for season 2 whenever it drops. Uh, okay, Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. Let's get to ratings here. Certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, 94%. 86% audience score. You mentioned it earlier. It won a ton of Academy Awards. It's got a 9.0 rating on IMDb with 1.9 million voters. And it's got 94 on Metascore. And my rating, of course, is 5 out of 5 stars. But I will say, actually, after watching all these extended editions, it is cemented. Two Towers is my favorite. But go ahead, Casey. Tell us your rating out of 5 for Return of the King.
okay. So I watched this yesterday. I geared up. I knew it was gonna be long, right? I knew when I was setting down, I was gonna have about 4 hours in front of me to
Yep.
to get through this story. I knew there was gonna be a break because I watched, as we said, I watched it on disc. Um, but so I would give this. I'd have to give this a 4 out of 5, and I say that to say I watched this. I put it on Facebook that I was finishing this trilogy. You saw when I posted it. So for me, it was around 2, 3 o'clock, somewhere in that range, on the West Coast, right? So I didn't do it too late. I didn't, I made sure it was like middle of the day. I had time, and I was fully refreshed and everything. The first half of the movie drug for me, and I actually like dozed off a couple times.
Yeah, I saw that
And
coming because I was watching it and I was like, oh my God, I thought there was way more action in this than there's been so far. It's like all the back half.
yeah, not look, disc two, back half, great. The story wise, the storytelling, it was great. Like I can't take anything away from that. And it's a good way to cap off the trilogy, right? But maybe just how they filmed it, or just because it's so dense and there's so much that they had to get to, and because everybody is spread across so many different places, and you got to cut from here to here, these people, and you go back over here, and then we got to talk
Mm-hmm.
about Schmiegel over here, and then we got to go back to these people, and so on and so forth. Like I said, there was a couple times I dozed off, and I couldn't rewind it because, like, when you do, I didn't want to go back too far, and I couldn't remember what I saw last. So I was like, well, I guess I just might have missed something, and I'm not going back to it. Like, I don't know what I missed. Um, Now I will fully admit that could be me. That could just be me because this wasn't totally something I was captivated by. As far as like
Well,
this is just isn't my thing. Like, not saying it's bad.
yeah.
So like it's just the whole Lord of the Rings things, as great as the stories were, as great as the movies were, and they deserve the accolades they got. Like, it's just not my thing. Like, you just weren't into the Tarantino thing, right?
Right, right.
Fair enough. That's not for everybody. You know, um, not once again, like I said, not saying this is bad or the stories are trash. Like, I'm not gonna trash it. One, because there's too many Tolkien fans out there, and somebody will stab me on my mail route. But also, like, I can just, like, I'm old enough and mature enough to accept, like, just because something necessarily isn't for you or isn't something that piques your interest doesn't mean it's bad. It just means, hey, that's not really your kind of thing, and like, you can accept that. So I'd give it 4. Overall, I would give the trilogy like a 4 out of 5 because it is great storytelling. Peter Jackson and the crew and the cast did a fantastic job with all 3 movies, and I can't imagine the level of work it took to get all 3 of these movies to the screen for us in a way that we can comprehend them, and to be able to put that much that much information out there. So I get that. Like, can't take anything away from it. So I give it a 4 for Return of the King, and a 4 for the trilogy as a whole, because it is great storytelling and there's a ton of work that went involved.
What I was gonna say is I don't think it's just you in the sense of, like, I was watching it, and yeah, that first 2 hours that I watched on Friday did drag a bit. It is extended edition, and it was
That could have something to do with it too. If I would
yeah,
have watched the theatrical releases, because I think I said this about the Two Towers as well.
yeah.
I don't think I said that about Fellowship. I think I said
But
Fellowship
Two
went kind of
Towers
low.
captivated me more than this one did in that first half, and I think that's like, even as a Tolkien fan and as a fan of these films, I was like, man, it's taken a while to get the scenes that I thought were early on, and I think it's because of the extended nature of things. And I would say, in a few years, whatever, pop in those theatrical and see if it flows even better, because I think there's a reason they cut the stuff they cut, right? While some of it I thought helps with some stuff, some of the stuff is either heavily talking exposition or just like stuff that you don't
Fan
really need.
service,
Yeah.
fan service, just
Yeah,
for
stuff
fans
that's
of the books that they
yeah,
would enjoy.
exactly. See the
So,
stuff from the books that we couldn't fit in the theatrical, it's in the extended. Um
and like I said with Two Towers, a lot of it could boil down to, like, you know these auteurs like him or Christopher Nolan, Tarantino, these people who make movies how they want. Like, there's so much that they want to put in, but at some point, someone's got to break it down to them. Like, look, the longer you make this, the less amount of times we're going to be able to fit this in a theater per day, which means that's
right.
going to be less money the movie's going to make. Yes, there are artistic reasons why we're making these films and telling these stories, but ultimately, this still is a business, and like, we make these because we want to make money off them. And there's an interesting YouTube series I watched called Half as Interesting, and one of the ones I saw again recently that talked about, technically, a lot of these movies don't make money because, like, Warner Brothers, they did with the Harry Potter series. Warner Brothers made a shell company called, what was the first one called?
Sorcerer's Stone.
Yeah, Sorcerer's Stone, like, LLC. So when some of the actors and actresses might sign on for a lower salary, but say they want proceeds from the back end of what the movie turns a profit on, right? So the companies were taking a killing on that because they'd be like, yeah, we'll give you 1%, but then like everyone starts getting 1%, or they start taking less salaries, and everyone gets more money on the back end. That's less money for the studios and studio executives, right? So then they came up with this whole thing of they make like this mystery LLC company, right? That they're the ones who make the films, but then they pay Warner Brothers a licensing fee. Like they pay, like that company pays Warner Brothers all this money back for all these other things. And then technically, Harry Potter, like I think Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone had a negative, like was in the hole $100 and something million. Technically,
Hollywood
it didn't
accounting. Yep.
exactly. But so like that's a whole nother thing of like this ultimately is still a business. Like we do this because we want to make money off of this. So make like I think part of it, like I might have enjoyed it more, or I could have had a different experience had I watched the theatrical cut, because maybe it would cut down to one disc, right? I'm pretty sure it's all on just one disc. Um, Two, like you said, it would have cut a lot of stuff. I might have had some questions, but you were here to answer it, and it could have been a different experience. But it could have just been a different experience for me, as far as like maybe I wouldn't have dozed off twice during Return of the King. But I still enjoyed the experience overall. Can't take anything away from it. Will I go back to it anytime soon? Probably not. Like you said, if anything, maybe a couple years down the road, I might go and watch the theatrical versions and see if I can note anything, see if it's a different experience.
All right. So what are we? We're finishing out Terminator, right?
What
T3.
what would you give the whole trilogy as a whole? You gave this one 5.
Yeah, I gave all of them 5, so 5 out of 5.
Okay. Okay. Now having watched the
Extended.
extended versions versus the theatrical versions. For a first time viewer, which they probably wouldn't be watching, they wouldn't be listening to this after watching it for the first time. But
Yeah, yeah.
what would you recommend a first time viewer watch? And is there enough of a distinct difference to recommend the extended versions versus the theatrical versions?
Yeah. So I would recommend theatrical. Is what I would recommend.
For just
Like
the
I said,
first time, or for anybody?
first time watcher for sure.
Okay.
I think, like I said, there's some stuff in here that, like you said, even as a first time watcher, maybe drags a bit or can confuse you. Um, they really streamline the story in the theatrical edition, even though they're like close to 3 hours still. They're more streamlined than these 3.5 to 4 hour, epics that they have, and enough that even a kid at 11 years old can sit down, watch them, and dive in. And extended edition, I would save for maybe your second watch, or if you've read the books and you're like, oh, I want to see some, maybe you want to see more of this stuff, maybe going with an extended edition and, being able to dive more into the lore of, Middle Earth and stuff like that. I still think Two Towers is the best extended edition. I know you probably disagree on that. You'd probably say Fellowship. Um, just from the way that they were able to set up some of the Rohan stuff, I liked that setup better than the theatrical. But again, it might be stuff that you don't actually really need, and that's why I'd probably recommend theatrical for any first time watchers that are going to dive in. And then, like I said, you can, and I would say even skip The Hobbit until you're done these if you want to watch more. Then like dive into the Hobbit theatrical, then dive into the Hobbit extended. Is probably how I would suggest it to people.
That was going to be my next question. So,
Yeah, don't do
for someone,
chronological.
yeah, it was going to be for someone who might be getting into the Tolkien universe initially, right? Would you recommend going The Hobbit first, or Lord of the Rings first, and then jumping back into The Hobbit?
Yeah, the reason I say that is because the way that Jackson did The Hobbit is, again, he uses part of the appendices from the Lord of the Rings movies, and it starts setting up events from Lord of the Rings. Um, The Hobbit is one book. They make it 3 movies, and it's a little stretched at times. But they add that stuff in with the appendices, and you get to see characters like Legolas again, and characters like I believe we see Aragorn. I can't remember.
Is it
Gandalf is a main
is it
character in it,
younger
but
versions of them, or is it the same?
well, Legolas looks. He's an elf that kind of looked the same his whole time, so you get to see
Yeah,
him. It's just Orlando Bloom again, you
I was
know.
gonna say, is it this is are it the same
Yeah,
actors, or do they? Okay,
yeah. For like, they get Hugo Weaving back for Elrond in those
okay.
movies as well. They get Kate Blanchett, all that
I was
stuff.
gonna say, can we talk about Hugo Weaving? This guy doesn't really get
Yeah,
a ton of he doesn't get a ton of credit for a lot of things. He's had some iconic characters, and he plays some characters really really well. Um, Obviously we have Agent Smith from the Matrix series. There's this. Well, he's done a couple other things I can't remember, but he's when
Red
he doesn't.
Skull.
Yeah,
Uh,
he's really. Um, I didn't know until I looked something up not that long ago that he's actually not even American. I think he's British or Australian or something.
yeah,
Um, but Hugo Weaving definitely, and he plays a sinister character really well too. I don't know if it's just because of his voice or his facial expressions, but he does really well with that.
yeah, yeah. I'm looking through his filmography just to see if there's any other ones we missed. Um, but no, yeah. I mean, uh, he's a great actor. I really do enjoy Hugo Weaving in these roles. Um, yeah, it doesn't look like we missed any big films that we just mentioned. Pretty much Matrix, Lord of the Rings, Captain America were like his big, I would say, genre films. He was also in Cloud Atlas. That's another one I enjoy, but yeah, pretty much just those and The Hobbit. And then he's been in a bunch of other stuff that's not like genre type stuff.
Blockbuster,
So yeah,
blockbuster type stuff. All
but
right,
yeah, he's
so
great.
for up next, we're gonna finish out the original Terminator trilogy. We're gonna go with Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines. This continues on with the Terminator story and the story of John Connor and how we get to Judgment Day and what happens leading up to that. Um, I will put this out there ahead of time. James Cameron is not involved in Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines. So it is a bit of a different movie. Arnold Schwarzenegger was not involved. Or no, he was. I'm sorry. He was involved. It was a later Terminator one that he wasn't involved in. But yeah, there's no James Cameron. And this one stars Kristanna Loken as a female Terminator. Um, for whatever reason, there became a big push. I don't know why about having a female Terminator, and or that became a big story thing that they wanted to do. I don't know why. I'll talk about it again next week. But they were also this was the wrestler China, Joni Lar. She was rumored, and I think she was trying to push heavily to be the female Terminator.
Hmm.
But it never came to be, and maybe some things could have turned out differently had she done that because she was physically a much different presence than Kristanna Loken. Um, but yeah, we're gonna close out the original Terminator trilogy.
Yeah, and then that's we'll move on. And I just want to kind of shout out here too. By the time this episode releases, it'll be around the 20th anniversary of Return of the King. So look at that perfect planning that we just did there. Um, all right, we will wrap it up here. You can follow us Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. All those links are in the show notes below of the video, but also on the audio. If you click episode details on the show notes, there has all of our socials that you can follow us on. So have a great rest of your week, and we will catch you next time.